Okay, so blood sugar, insulin. You guys hear me talk about this all the time as it relates to thyroid and hormones. And you get sick of hearing it from me all the time. So once in a while, I bring on a guest so that they can speak to you and tell you the same thing that I tell you all the damn time. But it's information that you need to implement in your life in order to be more metabolically flexible, to get out of that insulin resistance state, to stop burning sugar all damn day long. So my special guest today is Miss Danielle Hamilton. I met her through a very good friend of ours, Karen Martel. So grateful to Karen for introducing us. Danielle Hamilton is a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, restorative wellness practitioner. She specializes in blood sugar regulation and digestion. Just like me, we both have PCOS. So she became interested in blood sugar issues when she learned that insulin resistance is at the root cause of PCOS. And it is. It's not fixed by a birth control pill, people. It is not fixed by a birth control pill.
Amen.
Seriously. Amen. Big time. Amen. She was able to reverse her PCOS, cystic acne, PMS, and weight loss resistance by reversing insulin resistance. Her mission now is to help others uncover their blood sugar and insulin issues, as most people don't know the early signs of this, as well as help them optimize digestion for low-carb diets. Dani promotes a holistic approach to reversing insulin resistance, which goes beyond just changing your macros. It's an entire approach. She's the host of the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast and the creator of the Blood Sugar Mastery program, which we're going to be talking about today. So this is going to be a game changer for you, and you can probably hear the excitement in my voice. The latest introduction, the latest member of the family to the Fixxr line is Metabolism Fixxr. And this, oh my God, I formulated this just for all my people out there that need to lose weight, that need help in the weight loss department, that can't lose weight no matter what they do, that feel like they have a slow metabolism, and that might be thinking of trying all those peptides out there, the Beverly Hills soccer mom drug of choice for weight loss peptides. Or even if you're on them already and you're like, man, these are really expensive and I'm still not losing weight, add in Metabolism Fixxr. Here's what I did. I took the power of T2, which increases your basal metabolic rate while you are sitting there watching Netflix. You're burning fat while you're watching Netflix. I combined it with a very unique patented ingredient called Suppressa. Suppressa has multiple clinical trials backing its efficacy in reducing your appetite, decreasing snacking, and providing way more control over your food intake. It is amazing. We also see improved emotional well-being, just decreased food cravings all around, reduced hunger, and weight management. Add on top of that, we have green tea extract, we have purple forest purple tea extract, both of which affect the metabolism in a very positive way without the jitters of normal fat burning supplements out there from the 1980s and 90s, right? The ones that made you feel like you're having a heart attack. You will not have that in any of my supplements, Thyroid Fixxr or Metabolism Fixxr. But Metabolism Fixxr, ooh, yeah, we kicked it up a notch. It is in powder form, so you can drink it through your day. It's going to flavor your water. We got orange crush and refreshing citrus. I love them both. It is going to keep you under control all day long. So you throw a couple scoops in your water bottle in the morning, throw a scoop or two in your water bottle throughout the day. You will have fat burning and appetite control the entire day for what? An eighth of a price of the peptides? Oh my God, you can't go wrong. So grab some Metabolism Fixxr today. Please let me know how you do on it. I am super excited for you. Super excited. So Dani, thank you so much for jumping on here. I'm so excited to have you just give people this message.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Amie. I'm really excited to be here.
So you have quite the story. Kind of give us like the little bit of a rundown, because I get the PCOS thing. I get it. And a lot of my listeners have it as well. So tell me how you discovered your own and what that journey was like.
Yeah, so just kind of the Cliff's Notes of my health journey was that as a kid, ate a lot of sugar, and I grew up in that low fat era of the 80s and 90s, had a lot of eczema, colds, flus, that kind of thing. When I was a senior in high school, I got strep throat 6 times. I needed to get my tonsils out the next year. I got really bad allergies and asthma. I moved to Miami, Florida for graduate school, and that's where the season for allergies is all year round. And I was allergic to even palm trees. It was just crazy. I was just allergic to everything. And I was getting allergy shots. I was allergic to so many things. I was getting 5 allergy shots. I was on Advair and Singular and Zyrtec and albuterol. I mean, I was a hot mess. I had chronic sinus infections. I was so tired all the time from the sinus infections. I was falling apart. And I was in my early 20s. And at the time, I was working as a speech therapist in a skilled nursing facility. And I saw all my older patients just with all these chronic diseases and all these medications. And I mean, doing a chart review of all the medications. I mean, I spent half of my day writing lists of medications, let's be honest. Yeah. So I would look at my own issues and my own medications. And then I looked at my patients. I was like, I am heading for this because I'm in my early 20s and I'm on 5 medications, 5 allergy shots. And this is going to be what's next for me. And I had always cared about my health, but I was doing that like conventional standard, the what I call the conscious standard American diet. So whole wheat bread instead of white bread, and brown rice instead of white rice, and granola bars instead of a candy bar. But we know that the glycemic impact of these things are basically just the same. So needless to say, I happened to find about the paleo diet. And so I heard about this thing. I read this book by Rob Wolf called The Paleo Diet Solution. Yep. I got rid of all the processed foods. I threw out all the low fat stuff. I embraced fat. I embraced lots of animal protein, whole food carbohydrates, and everything got better. It was amazing. And I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. Then about a year later, after a really stressful event, I started gaining weight. I started getting acne. I lost my period. I was like, what's happening? Because this diet just made me so healthy. So what's happening now? Because I know that the answer is not to go back to doing what I was doing. So I truly believed in the power of real food, but something wasn't right. And I was trying and trying and trying. I couldn't make a dent in my symptoms. I looked on the internet. I saw that I probably had PCOS. I went to a gynecologist. I said, listen, I feel like I'm doing everything right. They told me don't eat refined sugar. I'm not. Don't eat gluten. I'm not. Don't eat dairy. I'm not doing this because I'm doing paleo. And I'm exercising. I'm eating well. I'm sleeping well. And I can't make a dent in my symptoms. You know, I think I have PCOS. And he goes, you do have PCOS. You have to lose weight. And well, I told him I can't lose weight. He goes, you have to lose weight. And he said, there's no cure and you have to take the pill. I know, just like what you said before. He said, I have to take the pill. He made me walk out with a script for the pill. I ripped it up in my car and I was like, well, I have more motivation than ever to heal this on my own. So I continued to try to hit the books and listen to every podcast I could get my hands on about PCOS. And it never clicked until I heard someone say PCOS is the diabetes of the ovaries. And right there, I was like, oh my goodness, I think that my blood sugar is involved, but I didn't know anything about blood sugar or insulin. And so I thought back, I'm like, okay, I learned about blood sugar and insulin. And I was like, okay, what are the symptoms that I had? Because I know that there has to have been something there. So I was a person, I'd wake up and I'd immediately need to eat. I would drink coffee and then I would feel really shaky. And I thought that was just the caffeine, but it was really my blood sugar. So I later on got a meter and my blood sugar was 60 when that happened. Again, I would go to doctors to get blood work during this time. My blood sugar was 60 or 62, and I was shaky and dizzy and lightheaded, about to pass out. No doctor said anything to me about this hypoglycemic blood sugar state that I was in because it was under 100. So they were happy. They were just happy it wasn't high, but it's still not good. Too high, too low. We want blood sugar always in that Goldilocks position. Yep. So in the, happy medium, right? And I was a person who used to eat before I went out to eat. I was like, why am I doing this? But I couldn't tolerate being hungry. I would think, oh my goodness, what if the meal was delayed? Or what if, we have to wait for a table? I couldn't tolerate hunger. It felt really, really bad in my body because it was an energy crisis, because it was a blood sugar crash. It wasn't just normal, healthy hunger, which I didn't know. I was a person who snacked all day long because I was just kind of dosing myself that little bit of sugar. I was just a grazer. I was a muncher. I would just little bits of things,
We're told in the 80s and 90s too.
Oh, yeah.
Eat every 2 hours to
keep
keep your
metabolism going. Oh, yep. See, you know it. Yeah, exactly. So, heaven forbid I didn't eat every few hours, like my metabolism is just going to stop. That's not what happens. So we're spiking our blood sugar, giving ourselves that dose of sugar to burn. And I effectively made myself a sugar burner because I raised my insulin so much that you can't burn your own body fat. And so that's why my blood sugar was going low. That's why I had the PCOS symptoms. So finally I realized this, and I was able to reverse the insulin resistance and therefore reverse my PCOS. And I don't have any symptoms of that. I have a very regular period. I don't have breakouts. I lost the weight. Like, it's amazing. So it's very possible. So that's kind of how it all started for me. And then I went back to nutritional therapy school and worked my way out of being a speech therapist. So I retired from that. And now I do full-time nutritional therapy.
Very nice. Oh, that's awesome. And yes, very similar to my story. I was on birth control in the past, like many of us were in our teens and 20s, but it wasn't because of PCOS. The PCOS actually developed after my hypothyroidism developed in my 30s. So hypo came in my 20s, PCOS like early, like 29, 30. And I remember going to my mentor, and I just went in, I'm like, why am I breaking out again? Why am I gaining weight again? He looked at me, he goes, you have PCOS. He's like, we can test you if you want to do a vaginal ultrasound, but you got PCOS. So I love the guy. He could just look at me and tell. But we treated the insulin, not the hormones, with slapping on birth control Band-Aid pills. So we
we're downing Vitex or all these, supplements to I was trying to do everything to affect these hormones, the testosterone, the progesterone, the estrogen. I could not make a dent for years until I finally looked at the insulin. So I'm glad that you knew better.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go into what you said earlier about, let's break it down for the listeners. Sugar burner versus fat burner. Metabolic flexibility is a term that we hear a lot in this space. So kind of get into the nitty gritty and describe those two conditions that people can be in.
Yeah. So when there's multiple states for the metabolism to be in, we can burn sugar, we can burn fat. So we're basically like a hybrid car. And we have these two energy sources that we can burn. And ideally, the body is able to burn whatever you give it. If you eat glucose, you're able to burn that glucose for fuel. And if you eat fat, you're able to burn the fat for fuel. And the problem comes in when we eat a diet that's really high in carbohydrates. We're eating carbohydrates all the time. So like all that snacking, because what's happening in the background is that we're constantly spiking our blood sugar, which is then going to spike our insulin. And insulin doesn't come down as fast as blood sugar does. So maybe you've seen a glucose graph where the blood sugar goes up and then it comes down maybe within 2 hours, right? If we're not, progressed type 2 diabetic. But the insulin will go up and it will kind of stay up and take some time to come down, which is why it's really important to space out your meals so we have time for that insulin to come down after the meal. Over time, we're chronically overeating carbohydrates. We're snacking, we're eating processed carbs because this is what they feed us. This is what they tell us is healthy. So it's not our faults, right? We were indoctrinated with this. We see it on commercials. And so we have these high insulin levels, and what insulin does in the blood, the higher levels are actually going to block your body's ability to burn stored sugar in the liver, which is glycogen. And it's also going to block your body's ability to burn stored body fat. So we store excess energy as body fat, and we should be able to use it. So think about our ancestors, they would come across a honeycomb and a berry bush and, kill a buffalo. They'd eat all they can. and then they store that excess as body fat, because then all of a sudden it's winter and we didn't kill the buffalo. There's no meal. I guess we're having body fat for dinner, right? So we'd be able to tap into our stored body fat to be able to give our brain the energy and our body the energy it needs. So that process should be happening all the time. So we should be able to eat. We maybe burn a little bit of the glucose. We burn some fat from our meal. Then that goes down. We stop eating because we're not eating around the clock. And then, we get a little hungry. Maybe the meal is delayed. Maybe we have a meeting or something. And it's like, that's okay. I'll just burn my body fat and keep my brain going. And so we should be able to tap into both, but those high insulin levels are really what's blocking the body from accessing its own body fat. And the brain is the first organ to really be affected by this ability to not burn body fat. So we see a lot of brain symptoms show up when we get, and usually it shows up when we get hungry. So all of a sudden you'll start to know if you're a sugar burner only, where you can't access that body fat, you don't have that flexibility. You start to see it usually when you get hungry. So you might be someone who gets hungry right away after you eat. So it's like you just ate and then you're kind of hungry again a little while later. You might get dizzy, shaky, lightheaded, feel weak. You might start to have brain fog. You might have difficulty concentrating. There's a lot of mood issues that are really show up here. So a lot of anxiety. I have so many clients who say they've been on every anxiety pill ever created. And once they start working with me, they get off the anxiety meds. They get off Klonopin and I mean, intense lithium, like really intense drugs. And they're like, I do not have anxiety anymore. And it was all from my blood sugar. That's your body saying, oh my gosh, we are running out of fuel. It's like the emergency, the gas light comes on in the car. Like, hey, you better get to a gas station ASAP because you're running low. That's the same thing. You get the trigger of the anxiety or irritability, or this lovely term we have now called hangry. I mean, people will correct me on social media. They're like, you spelled hungry wrong. I'm like, no, it's hangry. Like it's hunger plus feeling angry. And that's not a normal state. Healthy hunger feels like, oh, what time is it? Oh, I could eat. Yeah. Like, oh, you know what? I don't think I've eaten. I think I'm a little hungry. Like maybe I feel a little rumble in my stomach or something, but it doesn't feel like you're about to die or like you better eat or I'm going to bite your head off.
You're going to kill someone else. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like those Snickers commercials, right? Like you turn into Joe Pesci. I mean, you shouldn't turn into a different person when you're hungry. So if you are, it's just signifying that you have these issues going on and these are reversible. So that's the good news, right? We're not calling anyone out. We're just saying like, hey, you should know that even though this is really common and it's glorified in the media, it's not normal. And so it's pointing to a metabolic issue and we can do something about it, because eventually if that continues to progress, it leads to things like hypoglycemia, prediabetes, diabetes, obviously insulin resistance, which is at the root of this. We get the metabolic disorder, which is also used to be called insulin resistance disorder. I don't know why they don't call it that anymore. They don't even test insulin. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but yeah, that's sort of the analogy of the car. We want to be that hybrid car, being able to burn both fuels as opposed to just being able to burn sugar. And so we do that by lowering those insulin levels.
Well, and one thing and you can tell me if you agree, one thing I always tell my patients is that at any given point in time, you are either a sugar burner or a fat burner. So most of the time you are a sugar burner when you're eating all those carbs, you're eating multiple times a day and you're eating large meals and you're not giving yourself enough space and you're not doing any kind of intermittent fasting or anything. You are nothing but a sugar burner. And you literally never give your body a chance to even make that shift into being a fat burner, even for an hour or two. You don't even let your body do it. Whereas as we start working on different things, whatever it is, whether it's stress, we're going to talk about that, gut, digestion, thyroid being off, whatever the cause is of that insulin resistance, once you start doing those things, then you can be a fat burner more often. And I'm not saying, listen, even you and I aren't perfect. we're gonna be full on sugar burners. Like if we're at a wedding or it's Christmas, we're gonna tap in. We're gonna indulge in some carbs. At least I do.
Mhm.
But I know that I can make that shift right back into being a very efficient fat burner. I'm not going to stay a sugar burner for the next 7 days if I have a couple cookies.
Right, exactly. And that's where that flexibility comes in. And that's where we want to see if you do something like a ketogenic diet for a period of time, it's important to flex out of it because we also don't want to swing too far the other way. Some people also can sort of develop this what seems like a carbohydrate intolerance. So I hear Ben Bickman talk about this a lot. So there's 2 stages of insulin release. There's sort of like as soon as we eat something, the pancreas will put out a little bit of insulin because it knows that we're eating. And then it starts to make more insulin depending on how much carbohydrate we consume. And then it will put out that second phase of insulin to bring down the blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
But when we are chronically like not eating carbohydrates, which some people do for a period of time or whatever, if you're doing ketosis or something. And so the pancreas is really efficient. And so it's like, oh, she hardly ever eats carbs. So we're going to get rid of this insulin that's just kind of like waiting here in the wings. And we'll just make it if she eats it. So if a person who does low carb for a long period of time eats carbohydrates, like at a wedding, you might have a bigger glucose response than you would if you were eating carbs regularly, just because you don't have that first phase of that insulin. So it's like, oh, she's eating carbs, let's make insulin. So it sort of kicks in a little bit later. But it doesn't mean that you're insulin resistant. It just means that you didn't have that excess, the little bit of insulin to begin with. But switching fuels and maintaining that flexibility, I think, is really that sweet spot. So when we do have some carbohydrates, like at a wedding or, if we're doing a carb up, if it's summer and it's berry season and whatever it calls for, certain times of the month around your cycle, you might want to go into carbs a little bit more, that we have that flexibility. So we have the carbohydrates and then we go right back into fat burning mode. So overnight, we're not eating, we're fasting. And then boom, in the morning, we're back in ketosis or producing ketones or we're able to burn fat. So that switch is really great. And so not eating carbohydrates all the time at every single meal, every single day, every 2 hours is really going to help us be able to sort of switch on or off for the fat burning.
Yeah, definitely. And I think most of us in this space who are speaking on the benefits of lowering insulin resistance and being more insulin sensitive and implementing the ketogenic diet, most of us do talk about that flexibility. So I have a course called Keto for the Week. And in terms of as it relates to thyroid function, you want to come up out of that low carbohydrate state at least once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever kind of jives with your body. Benazati has the Keto Flex. Like we all have our versions of it, but we're basically telling you, you don't have to be anal retentive low carb because
and
that can actually, and you shouldn't be. Yeah.
Yes.
Because that can go against you instead.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. The last module in my blood sugar mastery program is how to have your carbs and eat them too, because it's like we want to restrict carbs for a period of time so that we can accelerate our healing, so that we can let those insulin levels come down, lower some inflammation, and then we benefit from them some of the time, especially as women around our menstrual cycles and, like you said, for hormone health, and then we dial it down. So the variation is really, really important. And I think that we tend to want to simplify things as humans. So it's like, okay, carbs are bad, so I just won't have carbs. It's like, oh, it's more nuanced than that. Unfortunately, I wish it weren't, but it really is. And so if the more, even with fasting, it's like people are like, okay, fasting is good. I'm going to fast a lot. More is better. It's not more is better. Blood sugar being low, it's not the lower the better, right? We have to find that spot. So the body loves variation, and the body is so adaptable that it's going to adapt to what you do really quickly anyway. So if you can have some sort of variation of your fasting, of your carb intake, of your, even workouts and then rest, like this up and down, we want to think that the body likes this, like, let's stress it a little bit, let it adapt. Let's stress it a little bit, let's rest and let it adapt. So thinking about that, like just those cycles, of nature too. We get the winter, we get the summer. There's, a lot of food available, not a lot of food available. So we want to be in sync with nature as much as possible. And I think that cycling carbohydrates is a really great way to do that.
Definitely. Definitely. So I'm going to kind of go the roundabout way. I'm not doing the line that we had planned. I want to talk about the testing now a little bit earlier than we had planned, because you had mentioned, testing insulin and then even just kind of seeing the blood sugar go up and down and what spikes. So I want to kind of get into that a little bit. So let's go over the different testing. On here, I drive home the point that you need fasting insulin, A1C, glucose, but I want you to tell people why. So I'm going to let you take the reins here.
I am so happy to hear that you are also pushing fasting insulin, because insulin can be rising for years or decades before we see a change in fasting glucose numbers. Yep. So a lot of people are like, oh, I test my insulin. I get it tested from my doctor. Here's the fasting glucose. It's like, nope, those are two different things. So let's start with glucose is one of the sugars that can be in our blood. Fructose is another one, whatever. But glucose is the sugar that's in our blood, and insulin is a hormone that is released from the pancreas due to the presence of glucose. Okay, so we need to test this hormone, and we can be having insulin resistance. We could be having double the normal amount of insulin needed to do the job to keep the blood sugar in a normal range. And what we see when we test our glucose is, oh, I have perfect glucose, but the insulin can be creeping up. So it's really important to test that. And the ranges, I think, can also be important to list here. So the ranges that I know and use, basically from Ben Bickman, who's like the king of insulin, is basically between 2 to 5. What do you say in your practice?
Yeah.
2 to 6?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want those numbers to be low. And if you look at a standard panel, you'll see 2 to 20 is considered normal. And I'm using air quotes here, because that's what your doctor might read as normal. But first of all, a lot of doctors refuse to even test this, which is just wild to me that they wouldn't test something. A lot of times they're restricted by the insurance, the codes to insurance. So they're like, you don't have anything. I can't bill for this. So I can't order the test, right? So there are at-home test kits available. So I like Get So Well. Luckily, that's how I test my own insulin, because I don't even have a doctor. So you can test this at home yourself. And I really recommend, you'll have to ask your doctor. So just want to plant that seed, ask your doctor, go through them first. If you can't do it, there are at-home test kits that you can get, but definitely test this number. Then sugar is really great to test. And it's not enough just to test your fasting blood sugar. It's just not enough, because it changes so much throughout the day, and so many things impact our blood sugar. So the foods we eat, caffeine affects our blood sugar, workouts do, our movement or lack of movement, how much muscle we have on our frame, stressors, heat, cold exposure. So all these things are how much sleep we got, that's a huge one. All of these things are going to impact our glucose levels. So getting a continuous glucose monitor, one that goes kind of on the back of the arm, that tests your blood sugar all the time, or just getting your finger prick meter. I'm pointing over here because I have one over here. And testing like right before the meal, and then every 20 minutes after the meal for the next 2 hours will give you a picture of what your sugar is doing after a meal or after exercise or something like that. So you want to get familiar with what your blood sugar does on a normal basis, so you can test that fasting number in the morning yourself, and that's a good number to keep track of. But you also want to test, what is this meal doing to my blood sugar? You don't want to test before the meal and 2 hours after, because anything could have just happened in that 2 hours. It could have spiked to 200. It could have stayed completely flatlined. Or anything in between. We want to test those blood sugar numbers every so often after, if we only have the finger prick meter, or get this CGM that can tell us what's happening all the time with our blood sugar as we sleep. We can see a lot of people have crashes at night. They wake up with a pounding heart, like they think that they're having an anxiety attack. And that's not anxiety. It's actual physiological anxiety, because your blood sugar dropped so low that the adrenals had to come in an emergency and pump your body full of stress hormones like epinephrine, which is adrenaline. So now you have your adrenaline pumping and you feel anxiety, but it was because your blood sugar crashed in the middle of the night. And so this is another common symptom of blood sugar dysregulation and insulin resistance that I see. So getting the CGM will allow you to look at these numbers. overnight and during the day. And then you can manipulate them. So you say, okay, I had a sandwich for lunch. My blood sugar spiked quite a lot. And then it kind of went down really low. Well, what's happening there? There was too much of an insulin spike, right? Your body sort of overshot. It's like, oh God, she's eating sugar. She's eating carbs again. Let me give her a lot of insulin. And it overshoots. And then you go low because it puts away too much blood sugar. So where does that leave us? That puts us in what I call the craving zone. That puts us in a state of, that's a reactive hypoglycemic moment, even if we're in the normal range. And when we go low with the blood sugar, our body is going to seek fuel. It says, oh, energy's low, I need fuel. So it's going to send you cravings, especially for carbohydrates, because it wants quick sugar to get that blood sugar back up to that happy range. And so this is where a lot of cravings come from. Not every single craving that ever existed, but a huge, vast majority of cravings come from these highs and then subsequent lows in blood sugar. And so when we have the CGM on, we can see, well, maybe if I, have a salad for lunch with, a good amount of meat on it, maybe some shrimp and some good fats like avocados and olives and olive oil. Let's see what happens now. And, oh, wow, my blood sugar hardly moved. I didn't have that crash afterwards. I actually feel more energized. So you can start to connect. One of the most important things about these blood sugar meters that I tell my clients is that you want to start connecting the blood sugar numbers with how you feel. So a lot of people will tell me, oh my goodness, when my blood sugar is coming down, that's when my anxiety starts. Or when my blood sugar goes up at this high point, that's when I get that headache. So, or this is when I know that if I see this pattern, I'm going to sleep really poorly. So all of a sudden, it's like you just have a window to the inside of what your body is doing, and you just put together the pieces of what's happening. And our blood sugar affects how we feel at every single moment of every single day. It affects every cell, organ, and physiological process in the body, and also has huge impacts on our long-term health. We know that Alzheimer's is being called type 3 diabetes. We know that, insulin resistance is affecting over 88% of the population, and they're having these secondary characteristics of the insulin resistance where it's now raising their blood sugar. It's increasing their waistline, it's increasing their blood pressure. They're having high blood pressure. So the little things throughout the day, this minutia, like, oh, I don't want to have a big blood sugar spike, you're actually making these investments into your long-term health as well. And really, you can really change the outcome of your sort of lifespan by impacting how your blood sugar responds at each meal and every day. I don't know. I could get carried away. So stop.
No, I love it because literally, I always say this on the show when guests come on, and I totally didn't pay them to say exactly what I say, but you just said exactly what I say. So I love it. And exactly the same way. I always say where there's a high, there's an equal and opposite low. So you jack your blood sugar high, it's going down the other side, and it's going to be as low as you just went high. So that's where you're going to get, and it's a biological response. It's literally your body saying, we're not comfortable being this low. Go to the vending machine, eat something so you can get us at least back up to baseline. But what do people do? They go to the vending machine, they eat something, then they go on that roller coaster again. Woo, we're high. Now we're low again. And it just goes on all day long. And I'm glad you tied this into other just longevity and other health conditions, because we tend to forget about that. We always think about weight. But even as you were talking, I was thinking, well, we always say that thyroid dysfunction will see insulin resistance with it because of insulin being a hormone, thyroid being the master. It's going to control the regulation of insulin. But as you were talking, I thought the other way around too. I was like, well, wait a minute. Insulin causes so much inflammation. If that comes first, you can literally destroy your thyroid with all that inflammation. 100%. And it's like the insulin resistance came first, then your thyroid shit the bed.
Yeah, I think it can happen either way, honestly. And I see a lot of times people come to me on thyroid meds, and they will need to, as we're working together, they'll need to reduce their dose of their thyroid med or get off it completely. I see this happen very often. And oftentimes it happens in a weird way because they're like, I don't know what's happening. I start to feel really bad in the morning. Everything was feeling good, but I feel really bad in the morning. I stopped every supplement you gave me. I'm just taking my thyroid med. I'm like, oh, you have to you have to talk to your doctor because you're going to have to lower that because it's now it's revving you up too much. They're like, I feel really anxious. So you go hyper. Exactly. So I see this happen very, very often. So yeah, the insulin resistant, a state of insulin resistance, not only is a state of carbohydrate intolerance, but it's also an inflammatory state. So you're getting that drive of inflammation from the excess insulin.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on, I want to go back to CGMs too, because the other really cool thing about them, and admittedly, I have not gotten one yet because I don't want to know the dark chocolate spikes me, but I'm
dark
good.
Chocolate doesn't spike. No. What percentage
do you have? Spikes people sometimes. So that scares me. I don't want to be one of those people that is like, yeah, I just had some stevia and I went to 180. I'd be like, no.
Okay, so I actually haven't seen stevia spike people. I've seen it drop people.
Oh,
so,
really? Okay.
Yeah, because think about it. If you have the sugar, the non-nutritive sugar, you get the tongue thinks that sweetness is coming. So you get that little first phase insulin release. Then no sugar comes. So you have the little bit of insulin and it puts away the blood sugar. So it can drop you a little bit low. So Lily's chocolate, for example, I did a personal experiment with Lily's chocolate, which has, I believe, erythritol as well. And that gave me a little bit of a low. I don't like the stevia sweeteners. I tend to do Alter Eco 90, 85 or 90%. I get no spikes. I do their mint and their raspberry, really clean ingredients. So those are good to go. Those are like very blood sugar approved. They have the healthy fats. There's the, the stearic acid in the cacao butter. So I say those are very approved. But yeah, I say I don't like to take coffee or chocolate away from anyone. You might be decaf, but you can still have your coffee.
Or maybe that's where I give a little. I'm like, okay, I'll take the blood sugar spike here with my coffee, and then I'll reel it in the rest of the day. So I do. I need to get a CGM because I think they're fascinating. They can give you feedback on stress. I mean, maybe you're not eating anything at all. And that's what I want to go to next is cortisol and blood sugar. But you're just having one of those crazy, busy, stressful days. And you look at your blood sugar and you're spiking. I'm not even eating here. And that's actually giving you a really inside look at your body chemistry and how stress can impact blood sugar. So I'm going to let you take that of how stress can impact blood sugar.
Yeah, absolutely. So it definitely impacts our blood sugar in the short term. So if we have a stressful moment, we might start to see that impact right away because we'll see the stress hormones get released, and which is cortisol and adrenaline. And that what they do is they tell your liver to break down glucose in the liver, and that's going to raise blood sugar. And they also cause the cells to become more insulin resistant because your body thinks, oh, she's stressed. She needs free energy. So we're not going to lock it away in the cells. We're going to keep it right here, ready to use. So that's how the blood sugar will get a little bit high. So if you're not utilizing all this energy that gets liberated, so let's say you're stressed out at your boss and you're sitting at your desk, you're not using that excess energy, the blood sugar levels are going to rise. And then this turns from an acute thing over time to chronic stress. And this is going to deplete the adrenals. It's going to deplete minerals. It's going to continue to elevate insulin. And then the blood sugar can't stay in a healthy range sometimes if the adrenals and minerals are too depleted. And that's where we start to see the hypoglycemia happen. But then for other people, it just starts to cause hyperglycemia. So it starts to increase your blood sugar. And over time, then you just have a fasting blood sugar or a chronic blood sugar level that's just elevated more often than not. And so reducing stress is so, so critical to optimizing and balancing your blood sugar and lowering insulin, because just the stress hormones themselves are driving insulin resistance and high or low blood sugar. Yeah, you do see it on a CGM. One morning when I was still a speech therapist, I was wearing my CGM and I hadn't eaten. I was fasting and I was like, why do I have a spike on my CGM? I'm like, what did I eat? I was like, oh my goodness, I was late. And so I was rushing to get ready. And a lot of us, I don't know if you've ever read the book Rushing Woman Syndrome. It's so good. I'm not even done with it, but it's probably Oh yeah, it's probably you and like 99% of your clientele, because it's me and 99% of my clientele. And it's almost like we live in this sympathetic state where it's like, I'm going to wait a few seconds and get a little bit of extra rest so then I could just be in this hyper state. And we drive ourselves. So sometimes I'll catch myself even just like moving or putting away dishes. I'm like, why am I going so fast? Like, it's like, slow the F down. I'm like, is this because I was born in New York? Like, I'm just like a fast paced person. Is this our culture? Is this society? Or is this just me? We're just, even just the way I talk, I'm like so fast paced. It's like, calm down, you know? And so I try to be mindful of, you know, how I'm moving throughout my day. Like, okay, I might be late to something, but or I might be, you know, getting ready. Does that mean I need to be rushing? So just bringing more mindfulness into how we do things. I forget where this quote comes from, but they say how you do anything is how you do everything. And I'm like, oh, this is me. I think it came from a yoga class. And it was like, oh, just fast, just get it done. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. But this is a chronic stress state that I'm working with. Right. So it requires me to get into this down state, to down regulate my nervous system. So I'm drinking Rasa coffee alternative. This is an adaptogenic herbs that actually help support the adrenal glands so they can calm down and they can balance out. And deep breathing and meditation, guided meditations for those of us whose mind is too wandery to, you know, practice a regular meditation practice. But anything that makes you feel good, a walk in nature, sitting outside with your feet on the ground, getting sunlight in your eyes, conversations with friends. My personal favorite, massage, you know, asking your partner, you know, just put your hands on my skull. You know, we call them skull rubs. And it's like, just kind of like you're shampooing. Oh my goodness, It feels so good. Anything with the ear will activate the vagus nerve. So gentle pulling on the ear, and that's going to stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. You can do like, put your finger right above where the earbud goes and just do gentle circles there. And that's going to stimulate that vagus nerve. And it can sometimes make my whole side of my head just feel droopy. And so these are some tools that we can use to down regulate. And if you're wearing a CGM, you can actually see your blood sugar start to come down. A walk is excellent for this because you're actually utilizing that glucose, but calming the nervous system by activating the parasympathetic with the deep breaths and these vagus nerve exercises, you know, self-massage, petting your cats or dogs, big hugs. Like, these are the things that we need more of. And it sounds like just give me the supplement, you know, tell me what macros I should have. No, like, this is the free stuff. This is the juice. This is the good stuff that we get to do. And that we often think maybe it's just me, like, I don't have time for that. No, like, if you don't have time for it now, your body's going to ask you to make time for it later. So putting these things into your daily routine, it's not enough to just say like, oh, I should meditate. It doesn't get done, right? Maybe it's just me again. We have to put these things into our routine. We have to prioritize them. Like, what is one calming activity that I can do today for 5 minutes? That's a huge ask for a lot of people, myself included. This is the thing I struggle with the most. I will put it out there. Like, my diet, I can eat a pristine diet, but I struggle with the self-care, with the down regulation. You know, scrolling Instagram, unfortunately, doesn't fall into this category. It's still lighting up our dopamine, you know, watching reruns of The Office, a close, but not quite there. We're not down regulating our nervous system. So we need to go out of our way to do these things. And that's going to support the adrenal glands and the HPA axis. It's going to start to lower the inflammation and lower the insulin levels and get our body to this healing state. It's going to help us sleep better, which is going to help us heal better. So these things are so, so important. Stress reduction can't be, I can't overstate the importance of it. So.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that because we all do that. I 100% agree that we have to factor it into the day because it's so easy. It kind of ties into the overworked woman of trying to run around and do everything. And if you don't structure it in, and I think when you have a CGM, when I have a CGM, I will actually be able to see. So even though I don't have symptoms, I'm not I'm not optimized. I am optimized, which is why I put off getting these like biohacking devices, because then I'm afraid of that orthorexia where I'll see it and it's like an Oura ring. Like I'll see I didn't get good sleep. So I'll be like, I must feel bad today because I didn't get good sleep. So, but I will get a CGM, I promise, because I tout the importance of regulating your blood sugar and your insulin all the damn time. So I should have one myself. So I will get one. Danny, real quick, have you ever seen, and this is actually a question that came right from today from a patient. Have you ever seen someone have elevated glucose at night when they're sleeping, but they're like 90s to 110 during the day? What's up with that?
I saw it in someone who was experiencing mold toxicity. So heavy exposure to mold. So my thought was that as the body was trying to detoxify at night when they were sleeping, it was a big stressful production because they were detoxifying. So I would look into that. So maybe.
Okay. Yeah. I'm glad I got to pick your brain with that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So you mentioned it earlier in the podcast, but you actually have an entire program, the Blood Sugar Mastery, correct?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So that's my 8-week signature program. And there's so much stuff in it because, it's holistic. We want to start with what should we eat? What should we avoid? What are the gray areas? What should I work on? Because some people coming from a standard American diet, to take out gluten is a huge ask, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, what should I eat then? So there's a blood sugar diet roadmap. We walk you through how to slowly change over your diet to become more conducive to having better blood sugar levels. And then we're going to transition that down. Perhaps you're going to go into a ketogenic state. And then we're going to look at flexing out of that. So it's not, hey, blood sugar mastery, never have carbs again. Goodbye. That's not the program, luckily. And we take a really deep dive into digestion, because one of the asks is going to be start eating more healthy fats. And a lot of people cannot digest fat very well because we've either been on a low fat diet too long and that bile kind of gets thick and sluggish. We maybe have been on a plant-based diet, or maybe we've eaten toxic vegetable oils all our lives because they're everywhere and they're really hard to avoid. And this is going to end insulin resistance, also impacts our gallbladder's ability to function, the liver's ability to make this thin, free-flowing bile that digests our fats, which is so essential for stabilizing our blood sugar, for healthy hormones. They're the backbone of many hormones that we make. So we need these healthy fats, but we need to be able to digest them. Same thing with protein. So I see a lot of people, they have heartburn, they have burping or bloating like within an hour of eating. They have fingernails that chip and peel. They have undigested food in their stool. These are all signs of low stomach acid. Did I mention heartburn? I forgot. But that's another sign of low stomach acid. And so if we don't have enough stomach acid, we can't properly break down our proteins. And digestion is this north to south process. So in order to get our body runs on nutrients. I think that a lot of times we may know it, but we kind of forget it. We might think, oh, we run on calories, but we run on nutrients. And so we want to think about becoming a nutrient seeker. We want to extract as many nutrients we can from our food. So digestion is the process of extracting and absorbing the nutrients from our food. So it has to be the number one healing priority of our body. And then a lot of people think, oh, I know good gut health is important. I want to heal my gut. But if you can't digest, if you can't break down the foods, guess what's going to happen? The food's going to get to your gut. It's not going to be broken down. It's going to have pathogens on it because you don't have enough stomach acid to disinfect that. And the intestines are going to freak out when this hunk of steak gets in there. It's going to say, no, we want amino acids and zinc. We don't want a big piece of steak. We don't know what this is. And so it's going to start to inflame because that's the immune system trying to protect you. And so you get this inflammation in your gut. It shaves down the cilia that are supposed to absorb the nutrients. And then the gut starts to open up because we compromise the integrity there. And then we get leaky gut. And then this is going to negatively impact the balance of bacteria in our gut. So a lot of times people are trying to take a probiotic to fix their gut. And that's the last step of the chain in digestion. We have to start from the top. We have to chew our food well, be in rest and digest. So we go heavily into that. We look at blood sugar spikes and how to reduce those spikes, how to, like I said, get into a healthy ketogenic state. And that's not for everybody. It's, I help you decide, is this the right time? If your blood sugar is crashing all the time, guess what? You're not doing keto yet. We have to stabilize you first. We have a whole module on adrenals, a whole module on the liver. And then, like I said, the last module is on carbs. There's a private community. There's 16 coaching calls. It's 8 weeks long, and you have lifetime access to all the videos. So it's a really full holistic program that looks at a lot of different things, that goes well beyond sugar. And I think that the most important thing, and maybe you see this too, is the accountability, that sense of community and people going through this too, because you and I are probably like the weird ones in our family or our friend group. People know that on my birthday, they didn't give me a cake at a restaurant with a candle in it. They gave me a plate of bacon with strawberries with candles in it. I mean, because people start to know you, and it takes a while to sort of say, no, I don't want a bun on my burger. And it's like, it might be hard in your group of friends to say, why don't you want the bun? Or, maybe you get pushback. Originally, when I adopted a paleo diet, my ex threw bread at me and told me I was in a cult because I didn't eat gluten. Yep.
Yeah. I think we've all heard that at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, it's hard to do this in isolation, and knowing that there are people there, and, to bounce questions off of a coach is really helpful. So that's why the program is so successful. So yeah.
Beautiful. No, you and I think so much alike. So I love the structure of your program and diving into all the areas that you're diving into. Absolutely love it. So we're going to put that. So you have a wait list for it right now. It's not active, right? So as people listen to this on what will be August 30th as a podcast, 2022, when is your next mastery course coming?
Yep. Enrollment is opening on September 6th, and the program starts on the 12th. So it's perfect timing. Perfect timing to get on the wait list if you're interested, and sign up when that enrollment period opens up.
Beautiful. Okay. So we'll have all those links along with all your social links so people can find you and follow you. And so thank you so much, Dani, for being on the Thyroid Fixxr podcast and for giving all this amazing information.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I can't wait to interview you for my podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And so I know a lot of my people struggle with thyroid stuff, and, I know it's really, really tricky. So I'm excited to pick your brain too.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have a good time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much.